A lot of people who already have a lot of XRP will become very rich if what Tom Lee says comes true. We need to talk about this because there is a very good chance that it will happen. You should be aware of this, especially if you don't only hold XRP, but also hold other cryptocurrencies or just Bitcoin. Let's talk about what's been going on in crypto first. The US-China trade deal is clearly the most important thing going on right now. Everyone is talking about it. This is because it'll make everything better, which is something I've talked about a lot on the channel. It's one of the main things driving crypto. What's going on in stocks right now is all as a result of trade deals that have been made or are happening in the last couple of weeks. We will first look closely at the deal with the UK and then at the deal with China. Other than that, the trade war may be easing up a bit. This is great news for stocks, but the US stock market gained over $2 trillion, 0 cents on Monday morning because of the news that came out on Sunday. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about what will happen next with crypto and stock. I really focus on the liquidity cycle because we have been following it to the letter. Every time there has been a big bull run on the, looking back at 2021 when the market and liquidity cycle were at their highest points, it's clear that we need to do a lot more. However, we should be able to reach the peak this year, which gives us plenty of time. We could reach the peak all the way through 2026. It looks a lot like 2021, which is strange since 2022 is coming up soon. That being said, I think this market will reach its highest point sometime between fall and early 2026, but funding will keep getting better. We're also mostly looking at Bitcoin's M2 supply because if you haven't been, Ralph Paul has been talking a lot about it. If you haven't been, this is a big part of what's going on with Bitcoin and why it's getting more valuable. If you're not paying attention, you might miss it. Some very important people have been in charge of this sharp rise in M2 stock. China has been getting a lot of M2 before anyone else. We're most interested in the US, which is starting to print a lot, which will, of course, make the M2 source itself blow up. On the other hand, the global M2 has been ahead of Bitcoin by 12 weeks. This means that Bitcoin is now starting to catch up quickly to the global M2. In fact, Ralph Paul and Julian from GMI were right on the mark when they said that the bobbing zone around Bitcoin is where the M2 stock hit its lowest point. If we really base it on the 12-week lead, that was exactly when Bitcoin hit its lowest point. We're now well over $1,000, 0 cents. If you look closely, we might see a small drop at first, but the next big push will get us to over 110K. From there, our goal for Bitcoin is to reach 140 cents to 160,000 cents. That's a pretty good push, right? That would make a lot of people who own XRP happy, since we should also be in an alt season at that time. Since Bitcoin doesn't look like it has much of a hold, but what if I told you that was just the start and Bitcoin could go much higher? That's what Tom Lee says. There are two movie clips. In the first, Tom Lee says, now that the borrowing is over, I think Bitcoin is going to catch up to gold. He mostly meant to talk about moving money from gold to cryptocurrency when he said this. In the end, that's exactly what happened in late April or early May. Okay, gold stopped being interesting after that, and there was a big turn back toward Bitcoin. But look, Bitcoin is also up almost 3.5%. Even though I haven't introduced myself yet, I'm thinking of you when I talk about this more. My name is Tom Lee, and I work for Fundstrat as the head of research and as the chief financial officer at Fundstrat Capital. I also write for I'm not sure if it was you or Pomp who said that Bitcoin usually follows a couple of months later, but has a much bigger move. We were talking about how Bitcoin was stuck under 85,000 while gold was going up every day. It's probably Pomp. He's pretty positive, so I think so. It's a pretty big change. Have you seen anything else like it? Gold has been going down for about 2 to 3 months now, but it has now reached new highs, leaving Bitcoin far behind this year. It looks like it can handle 4,000 though. Do you think Bitcoin will get some of the same money bids in the end? Yes, I think so. I think that Bitcoin earlier this year may have had trouble because some big investors' debt was being paid off, so they only sold what they could. I think that made Bitcoin less valuable, especially on weekends But I think Bitcoin will catch up to gold now that the debt has been paid off, and Bitcoin's all-time high was over 110,000. Because stocks are a non-dollar object that can grow, you think they are a good investment, but there is still a lot of doubt and it will stay that way. You said that the VIX hit its highest point on April 7th. Is that still true? Yes, I think it will be hard to beat that level of fear again. I think we are now past the peak of doubt. In other words, I'm not sure if the pain is over, even with this Fed mess. And I mean, I still think there's a chance that the economic effects will make markets shaky, but I think that fear will be hard to match again. That being said, I do believe that a structural low did happen, and I agree with Tom Lee 100% that I think we have seen a very low point. I would say that fear was at its highest point around the end of February. From the middle of March to the middle of April, everyone was very scared. The trade war and price war were covered by the news for weeks. Also, how I see the market now is very different from how I did then. In this case, I agree with Tom Lee. What did he think the price of Bitcoin would be? Tom Lee, Bitcoin could hit $250,000, 0 cents this year. Now is the time for banks to get into crypto. If we're not sure we're ready yet, here's a more up-to-date look at what's happening in Bitcoin 1000. What does that mean in this type of study? Yes, the Fed is stupid, but they're not cutting rates. Bitcoin is down about 15% from its all-time highs, which is normal for a currency that is very volatile. This halving cycle is still pretty new, so let's talk about Bitcoin. In the short term, our technician thinks that $70,000, 0 cents, is a good price to make a stand. That means you're getting a great chance because I think Bitcoin will be one of the best performing assets. But what if you still think it goes all the way down to $70,000, 0 cents? Or that's the floor. If that's the case, would you still buy it at this price? That's $70,000, 0 cents for one level. There are stages of retracement where you move back from where you gathered. Okay, $70,000, 0 cents is one level. It might not cost more than $50, 0 cents, zero again, but that's not a new level. It's just where you are now. You can hit something before it starts to rise again. Also, I have another question. Would you tell people who are watching but not invested in or thinking about Bitcoin that now is a good time to buy? Or would you tell them to wait because you think the price will go even lower? When it comes to Bitcoin, you need to think about the long term. $90, 0 cents. I don't think anyone will lose money if they buy now, but I think Bitcoin could be much higher this year, like $200, 0 cents, or $250, 0 cents. If they're lucky, they might get lucky and it goes to 70, which is why I still think $90, 0 cents is a good place to start. I don't think the same way Tom does about Bitcoin, so I can't totally agree with his $250,000, 0 cents goal.